I'm Dave Laird.
I'm Matt Booker.
And I'm Martina Testa. The grey clouds are bulbous and wrinkled and shiny. The sky looks cerebral here in the Great Concavity.
I love that. That is excellent, Martina.
I love that line.
Thanks for bringing us. Yeah, that's good. Where's that from, Martina?
That's from Little Expressionless Animals, one of my favorite stories by David Foster Wallace.
Yeah, it is. I would say maybe it's my favorite short story by him as well. I love it so much. The fact that you have Alex Trebek and Pat Sajak together is just hilarious. And Jeopardy, of course, is great. So having that all together by Wallace is amazing. So thanks for joining us for episode 54, everybody. Our guest is Martina Testa.
And I should say Martina is more than just a guest. Martina's my friend, and I feel like I've known Martina forever. I'm trying to think when we met Martina, maybe the year 2000, 2001.
Yes, I think probably 2001, I guess, or maybe earlier. But we knew each other from before, maybe from when I was translating David Foster Wallace, in 2000, even 1999, maybe, because we were on the list on the David Foster Wallace fun mailing list. Yeah. I don't know how to call them.
Listserv.
Howling Phantoms
the
list.
Listserv.
Listserv.
Wallace L.
Yeah, so that we were
cool.
Friends in pen friends, I guess, before we met in person.
Sure. So we've gone back at least 20 years. I would say we've known each other online longer for sure. But as you've alluded to, Martina is a translator. She lives in Rome. She's staying up very late tonight so that Dave can be online in New Zealand the next day, and I'm in Austin, Texas, sweating in a room right now because my air conditioners are very rattly, and I had to turn it off so it wouldn't be in the background of this recording. But the three of us being spread all over the globe, I want to thank you for staying up late tonight.
Yes. This is probably our most disparate time recording we've ever done, I think, for an episode, Matt, where we're all in the craziest different time zones possible.
This is so cool. And it's a pleasure, really. And I go to bed very, very late, so it's okay for me.
So, Martina, I wanted to finish by saying that you have translated a ton of amazing books. And I remember back even 20 years ago, you were translating Colson Whitehead and Amy Bender and Cormac McCarthy. And I remember you've also translated, I think, Karen Green's book, Bow Down, and David Lipsky's book.
Really? Yes.
Of course, you end up becoming yourself a very long title in English and Italian.
What's the Italian title of that?
The Italian title is Come diventare se stessi, which only means how to become yourself. We shortened it because it was way too big.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So anyway, I feel like we have very similar taste, and that's one reason why we became friends. In that we read a lot of the same books, and you've translated Jonathan Lethem and Ben Lerner, and I feel like we like a lot of the same American writers, and that's when you started out, you were an editor and translator at Minimum Facts. So we're going to get to all of your timeline now, but now you work for a company that. It's called Edizioni SUR, right? I probably said it wrong, but...
No, it's... you said it good. Edizioni, it's just that the Z is a Z, but Edizioni SUR. Anyway, yes, these are two small independent presses from Italy. I worked at the first one, Minimum Facts, for 14 years. And then the two publishers, they fell out with each other, and one of them left the company and founded another one, which is where I work now, Edizioni SUR. So
He's our friend Marco, a longtime friend of
exactly.
Marco. Of course.
Exactly. I've been working with Marco Cassini for 20 years in indie publishing in Italy. That's been my whole my lifelong career has been in small publishing, and I've always worked both as an editor, choosing books to publish in Italian, and as a translator. But as a translator, I'm a freelance person, so I also translate for other publishers. Sometimes I have the privilege of translating some books that I acquire for my for the press I work for. So, for example, John Henry Festival, John Henry Days, because John Henry Festival is the Italian title, but John Henry
Right.
Days by Colson Whitehead is a book that I acquired and I translated, and the Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead again is something I acquired and I translated. So I'm very
Amazing.
privileged in that, and I also get work from other publishers. So yes.
So and let's go back to that, because I think the beginning of Minimum Facts is very interesting, and that Marco, it's an interesting name for a publishing company to begin with. And so I remember asking Marco about
Minimum
it.
Facts.
This is like in the maybe early 90s, right? Mid 90s. And that Marco, I believe, had almost like a magazine or a newsletter that he would send around by fax. And it was
the
American literature and translation. Some of it was Italian writers, but it was actually faxed around.
Yes. This is that was before I met Marco. But Marco and his friend Daniele, they started in 1994. They started this magazine, this literary magazine, that they would send by a fax machine to a number of subscribers. So they were like 25 at the time, and the fax machines were, I don't know, this brand new technology. It didn't last long, but they were very, they were the first, maybe, I don't know, maybe the only literary magazine that was ever sent via fax machine. But it was almost like, a lot of, I mean, the press was interested, and the writers, they would go to, were sympathetic, and they would give them like short, unpublished pieces. And I'm talking, I mean, they were publishing people like Paul Auster, or I think probably Umberto Eco gave them like a page or something, just because they would approach them after a reading or something, saying, we have like this, this literary magazine that we send via fax, and people were, I don't know, enchanted by it or something. And so after a while, they published, I think, 10 issues of that, I guess. And then they decided to start a proper publishing house. And that was, I think, 1995. So they started publishing a little bit of beat poetry. They would publish Ferlinghetti, something by Ginsberg. Then they had like their big break when they made an offer for the whole works of Raymond Carver, who had been published in Italy before, but was at that time, like it was, I think, 1998 or something. His books were not in print anymore. So Marco and Daniele made a big offer. I mean, a big offer for their standards, and they were competing with Einaudi, which is this huge, big publisher, major literary publisher in Italy. But Raymond Carver's widow chose Minimum Facts as the new publisher of Raymond Carver's complete works. And that project was extremely successful and really put the publishing house on the map. And that was 1999, I think, when I first met them through common friends. I made friends with this small group of, I think they were probably in the late 20s. They were like publishing Italian authors and some American authors in translation. I met them because we all started we met through common friends because we were all in the editorial committee of another literary magazine. This one was called Elliot. There's this Disney movie, I think, who can remember, but it's Elliot was an invisible dragon anyway at some point in the 80s, I think. So Elliot was the name of this literary magazine, which like a bunch of college kids in Rome started in the late 90s. Some of us had no work experience, and some of us were just starting in publishing. And Marco had just he'd been working at Minimum Fax for 3 or 4 years, and another friend was working at another indie press. So it was a bunch of people in love with literature, who decided to start this magazine. And since a couple of them were actually also working in publishing, I started doing a little bit of work for them, reading something or proofreading something. But mainly, I translated. I started translating for them. And the first book I translated was it sounds quite incredible. It was a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again. It's an incredibly difficult book to translate, and it shouldn't be the first book that the translator works on. Sorry, I'm talking too much.
No, this is great.
Speaking of this idea of Wallace being untranslatable, you get mentioned in Lucas Thompson's book Global Wallace, and he's been a guest on before. We talked to him, and he cites an instance where Wallace emailed you about you had questions about incarnations of burned children, and Wallace thought it was basically untranslatable as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So
you're jumping ahead here, Dave. That's
I'm jumping ahead a bit.
That's one of my main stories, and I would propose that we come back to that because
sure,
I like this going chronologically because I think it's very interesting to track, Wallace's career not only in the U.S. but in Italy, and it's through our relationship. And so I know Infinite Jest was translated by Fandango first.
Yeah, but that was okay. So I'll tell you about the in Italy, the first book by David Foster Wallace, which was translated into Italian, was exactly a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again. Is in Italian it's split into 2 different books. They were both published by Minimum Fax. One is just the cruise essay, and that's the first book by Wallace, which was translated in Italian. And that was I didn't do that. That was 1998, I think. But another, actually, he's a fairly successful Italian writer now, Francesco Piccolo. He was friends with Marco. He was like a good friend, and he probably could speak English quite well. I don't know, and he has never translated other books. Francesco, he's written several also best-selling books in Italy, but he. But anyway, so I don't know, because I was studying at the university in 1998 and I wasn't working with Marco. Minimum Fax did publish the cruise essay as their first David Foster Wallace book. But it remained the other essays. They wanted to make a book with the other essays, and they were looking for someone to translate those. Me and my friend Christian Raimo, his name. He's a published writer in Italy and a journalist. We had both read A Supposedly Fun Thing I'll Never Do Again in English. And I think it was Christian who first introduced me to David Foster Wallace. We were both, I think, 23, 24 at the time. I have no idea how he knew about Wallace, but he told me, you should, we were like very, very good friends. He told me, you should read this guy. And I still remember reading the first essay in A Supposedly Fun Thing, and just have like derivative sport in Tornado Alley, and like feeling my brain like I had never
explode.
ever read anything like that. What was that? And then after it's like E Unibus Pluram, also that. Wow.
Yeah.
I was completely blown away. So we both loved this great, great writer, completely new, completely unique to us. Also, you have, I think, in the 90s. I mean, in Italy, when I was 20 in the 90s, and most of I loved literature and reading, but I had almost only read classics or books from before World War II, or I wasn't really reading anything very contemporary, not from like pop culture references were not something I was. I don't know, I was used to. So I started discovering this new contemporary American literature through, I think before Wallace, there had been like Douglas Copeland and Bret Easton Ellis. And these two were like, also for me, they were like incredible experience, very new, because I didn't know you could write literature,
write about this kind of stuff. Yeah,
exactly, about these things. So, and I think because we were, I mean, probably the Italian literary scene in the 90s was much less, I would say, Americanized than it is now. Actually, there were not many like pop literary books being written in Italy in the early 90s. And there was never like big postmodern novels in Italy. Not many of them either. So he really blew my mind. So Christian and I went to Marco Cassini, the editorial director and founder of Minimum Facts, saying, hey, you are going to translate the other essays by Wallace. We want to try and translate a sample. And let us just try. We had never translated a book. We just could read English because we went to like language school, and that's all. But we were two big nerds. So I was reading a lot of books in English, and we just tried, and they liked our samples, so they asked us to translate. I think we did like 4 out of 6 of the other essays or something like that, Christian and I. And that was my first experience translating a book. And I think it's so strange because it's really such difficult, complex syntax and language. I don't know how I did it. Actually, Kristen and I didn't do it alone because we asked a lot of questions to a lot of different people. We emailed sports journalists. We emailed people working in cinema to translate the David Lynch piece. And we asked a lot of questions on the Wallace mailing list. I think one of the guys on the list, this Australian guy, I think he was, his name is John Twitty. I don't know. I thanked him in the book. There's a little note thanking, I think, Matt and John, because they helped with a lot of strange language that we didn't understand. And it was also funny because when we asked about some words that Wallace would use in his essays on the mailing list, people would come up with different answers. So sometimes even like American people were not completely sure what he meant or what that expression was. Yes, what that meant. His language is so incredible. That was the first book I did, and then after that, Minimum Facts published. I started working in early 2000. I started working at Minimum Facts as like I don't know like a copy editor for a very, very small amount of money. But it was like a dream job for me, like working in books. I didn't care that the pay was so low.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that's a big difference. I didn't even know that you could actually work in. I was studying at the university. I was studying like Greek and Latin. I didn't think of like working in publishing. Nowadays, there's a lot of publishing workshops and courses, and a lot of young people know
Right,
what an editor is, what a publicist is, what an editorial assistant or a literary agent does. But I didn't know at the time. I had no experience at all, and I wasn't even thinking of. But it just happened that I met these people, this group of people, and some of them were in publishing, and I kind of followed them and became part of this group. I never even sent a CV. Which is very strange. So when people sometimes ask, how do you start working in publishing? It's very different today than it was in 1999 or 2000.
So I have two questions for you. Going back to, you mentioned Einaudi. They're sort of like the Random House in America. Like, they're huge. They're the biggest ones. And after Minimum Facts first published Wallace, did they try to secure the rights away from you? I know there was also, the second question is, there was this festival after Infinite Jest was published in Italy that I remember, like, public reading of Infinite Jest, and there was a lot of excitement. And, not to say anything bad, but I know that translation was not done by you. It was not like, you did not translate Infinite Jest. Did you have desire at that time? Were you reading Infinite Jest in English after you read the Supposedly Fun Thing?
I did. I read Infinite Jest after Supposedly Fun Thing, but I had no desire to translate it. It would feel like too big and huge for me. So these other indie press, Fandango, bought rights to Infinite Jest, and they had like, it's complicated. The story goes, it's like two different translators. The first one started doing this, and then she kind of, I don't know, she was in over her head. Do you say something like that? She wouldn't deal with it.
Yeah,
it was
perfect.
too much.
Yeah.
So then they somebody else translated the rest, and then a third person like revised the whole thing and put it all together. And the translation is signed by this guy whose name is Edoardo Nesi. He's also a very good Italian writer. That's interesting because there are so many writers who have translated Wallace into Italian. There's a lot of people who translated Wallace into Italian were also they were writers, not professional translators. But anyway, I think Edoardo's translation, so it's a mix. It's like three different people working on it, but Edoardo was the one that put it all together. And I think he did a good job. When I was in 2000, they had to celebrate the launch of the book. They had this in complete reading in a small a small theater, like a movie theater in Rome, like a small one, an art movie theater. They had people reading Infinite Jest constantly for a whole weekend. I think they started on Friday afternoon, and we finished on Sunday night, and people were reading around the clock. I did read part of it. A lot of people came.
It's like the ultimate filibuster. Just read Infinite Jest for a whole weekend.
Yes. It was so amazing. So I remember going there, and I was people were reading, of course, in Italian, but I went there with my English copy. So I was following on the English copy and just listening to the Italian to see, my brain was checking for mistakes. And I was such a nerd that I took notes and wrote Edoardo an email saying, well, I think there are these 10 different points where I would have translated it differently. which was I'm still ashamed of it because it was
Yeah.
like so I don't know obsessive. But I think given the difficulty of the whole thing, I liked the translation. But of course, I'm sure it's full of things that could be made better. But also my translations, I think all translations um, are possibly I mean they can be made better. I don't think his was a bad translation. I've heard people complaining about it. I haven't read it apart from the parts that I read in the I listened to during that reading. I haven't read the whole thing in Italian, so I can't really judge. From what I've listened to, I think it's a good translation. But that was Fandango. You were asking about Einaudi. At the same time, there was even a third Italian publisher publishing David Foster Wallace. So Minimum Facts did a supposedly fun thing I'll never do again, split into 2 books. And at the same time, Einaudi was translating Girl with Curious Hair. I don't know why the agent decided to sell different books to different publishers, but anyway. So Einaudi was translating Girl with Curious Hair in 1999, and If in Jest was 2000. So these were the first books by Wallace. Afterwards, Minimum Facts also translated
Westward, the Course of Empire.
Exactly. That was the second book I did by David Foster Wallace for Minimum Facts, because they translated just the Westward as a separate book. Because Einaudi didn't buy that. Einaudi only buy both the other parts of Girl with Curious Hair. Minimum Facts, it was very complicated. I didn't deal with foreign rights at the time. But anyway, so Westward was the second David Foster Wallace book that I translated, and I wrote a foreword for it because it's so complicated. I mean, that story makes very little sense if you're not a scholar of American literature.
Yeah.
If you don't know who John Barth is.
Yeah.
So I wrote a foreword for it, and at that time and then I did. I translated myself into English and sent it to David Foster Wallace because I wanted to see what I was writing about him, and that was I think the first time we corresponded. I think. I sent him my thing, and he wrote back with a lovely note saying he loved my foreword and maybe I had been too generous about his story. He didn't really like the story too much. And that day I was like, oh God, I'm still like, I get goosebumps because I was such a huge fan of this guy.
Yeah.
I was like, I was on the David Foster Wallace mailing list, and completely in awe of this writer. And so that's another thing. I translated for Minimum Facts, and after that, Minimum Facts got the rights to Girl with Curious Hair, which I retranslated because I have to say that Einaudi translation was not. I think that one is not very good. So instead of like revising it, I did it again, and that was I think 2003. And after that, the new Wallace book was the first new one that came out after that was Oblivion. I think, Brief Interviews probably. Can't even remember. But after that, we would have loved to keep publishing him, but Einaudi came in with big offers. So we can't say that Minimum Facts. I mean, we were the first to translate him, and then Fandango did Infinite Jest, and then Einaudi came in. I mean, they had for some years they did publish Girl with Curious Hair, not in a great edition, but at some point they came in and started buying everything. So David Foster Wallace is is an Audi author. But there are like these 3 books by him, a supposedly fun thing divided into 2 books. And Girl with Curious Hair, they're still in the Minimum Facts catalog, and I'm incredibly proud of having worked on those books.
Hey, Martina, do you remember back in those days, about 2000, Wallace came out with a new story in McSweeney's it was Mr. Squishy. And, you know, the new stories that were coming out around that time, Good Old Neon came out in conjunctions in like 2002. And, you know, it was building up towards this collection of stories that would become Oblivion. But a lot of those had been published beforehand, and there was a lot of excitement when a new story would come out, especially on the Wallace list of, you know, he published Mr. Squishy under a pseudonym. It wasn't sure if it was him, and there was a lot of excitement, like when Good Old Neon came out, of like, how do we get a copy of this, because it wasn't online. You know, a lot of this stuff was just not online. It was in print only. These are the very early days of the internet. And
what was the pseudonym that it came out under?
Elizabeth Clem.
Remember?
And
Oh, yeah.
and we were like, there's no freaking, this person doesn't exist. There's no person named Elizabeth Clem. This reads exactly like a David Foster Wallace story. Like, it's got to be him. And I think there was even some like subtle hints in some live events McSweeney's had done that like Wallace had given them a story, basically.
But I told him personally. I wrote to him when I sent him my forward to Westward. I also told him I was convinced that he was Elizabeth Clem, and actually in his note that he sent back, I can't remember, but he says like, I'll give my best regards to Miss Clem or something.
That's good.
But with the excitement, what I wanted to get back to is like just the excitement of whenever, because you were bidding on the rights for Oblivion and you got the manuscript in. I remember either you called me or emailed me, and you're just like, holy shit, we have the new story from his agent. And it's like, it was the story Oblivion. And it was like, so excited. It was like, I have never felt that kind of a thrill. Like, I can't even imagine any other thrill. Like, maybe when the Pale King came out and I first got to read the Pale King, it was that exciting. But reading the story of Oblivion, because it came, you know, in manuscript form directly from the agent, it was unlike any of the other, like, here would be a new story from Wallace in a literary magazine. It was like, here's one that's delivered top secret. Do you remember that?
I remember getting the manuscript, but I'm being incredibly excited. Also, I have those stories you were mentioning. They were not on the internet, so I actually have the printed copies of those literary magazines, because Marco and I would go to New York City in 2000, 2001, 2002, and we would buy like from St. Mark's bookshop, a copy of Conjunctions. There was one that it's the Soul is a Smithy, I think, is in Agni, a literary magazine from some university, and then McSweeney's. I would buy McSweeney's every time I went to New York, and we tried to go like once or twice a year, because there was basically no way to get McSweeney's in Italy in the early in 2000. It was almost impossible to get. It was probably impossible. I don't think maybe they would ship internationally. I don't know. But so yes, I was discovering all these stories, and then the manuscript came. It was incredibly exciting, but of course we lost it to Einaudi. So for me, that was like the first. It has happened to me a lot of times, of course, afterwards, but that was the first time when I was so bummed and so sad, because I couldn't buy, I couldn't buy and I couldn't publish this book I loved, because like a major publisher had come in with a huge offer. That was the first like slap in my face. So you're an indie publisher, and you will always like that's your destiny, that's your fate. You translate a couple of books by one great writer, but you can't keep publishing him or her because you don't have enough money.
Right.
So
And then you just went full Marxist after that, right?
She's always been a Marxist, my friend.
If you weren't already, yeah.
Let me ask you. This is the question we have not got to yet, and that is why? Why is David Foster Wallace so popular in Italy? I would say outside of the U.S., that's his biggest audience. We get tons of
that's the sense I get too.
Listeners. We get tons of people who join the David Foster Wallace Society from Italy. There've been conferences there. There's been, Wallace went there. We're going to talk about Capri in 2006.
Yeah, totally.
Yes.
You were his translator on stage. Why do they love him so much?
I think he. I'm praising like myself and my friends, but actually I think
so well
David Foster. But I think David Foster Wallace was published by people who were like nerds or like fans, or like we built a fandom around him because we were his fans. Like both us at Minimum Facts and the people at Fandango, it was not like a big publisher knowing that this was like a big bestseller in the US and like betting on a safe bet. It was like some small presses falling in love with this incredible writer and bringing it to some like niche, I guess, readership, but those readers were passionate about it. So there was like, it was something that we loved, and we, in some way, I don't know how, because I was never a reader of those books. I was the one who made those books. So I can't talk about how they were received, because I wasn't receiving them actually. But I think the passion and the it was like done in a. There was a bit of a DIY feel to the way it was published, the way that it was launched with like this 50-hour long reading, which was not like for cool people. It was just a lot of it was just like people, like a small number of weirdos who would stay up at 4 a.m. reading books, and those are
That's awesome.
And those are the people who David Foster Wallace was appealing to in Italy before he died, before everything. It was his first readers were very passionate, crazy, strange readers. It was not mainstream at all. He didn't come to it as a mainstream writer, but it was like a grassroots thing, which grew from there. But we weren't selling many copies at the time at all. But we were making friends. I don't know. We were making people love him. So maybe that's where it started. Maybe other publishers. I mean, at that time, he wasn't published in France or Germany or pretty much anywhere else, I guess. I translated his essay about rap, about hip-hop music, and I don't think that has ever been translated anywhere else, unless maybe nowadays. But I translated that in 2000. So there was like this small bunch of very passionate David Foster Wallace fans, and who were actually publishing him. So maybe that's why.
Isn't the title of that in Italian something like "Rap Explained to White People"?
Yes.
That's
yes,
amazing.
We called it that. Yes, exactly.
Let's call it like "Explaining Rap to White People" by David Foster Wallace.
A white guy explaining
Costello.
African American culture to other white people. Yeah, good.
And Mark Costello, right? It has been translated a couple of other times now, but I know that you've met him a couple of times. You had met him in the U.S., and maybe we'll come back to that. But
yes,
the 2006, I haven't really talked to you about this. Like I remember seeing the videos from La Conversazione where you're on stage with him as his translator, and here he is walking through the streets of Capri with Zadie Smith and Karen Green and John Franzen and Jeffrey Eugenides, and But tell us,
Englander.
it looks like absolutely gorgeous place. Like I want to go there no
Yes,
matter
I know,
what.
but you can't because it's
But
for rich people. It's for people
it's
who
for
are
rich.
so much richer than we are that you can't really go to Capri if you're like an average guy unless someone invites you,
Oh, yeah,
or
okay.
you can stay. Like I
This
stayed on my
makes good
like for maybe
sense.
2 days. But
Yeah.
it's an unbelievable place because it's of course it's gorgeous and it's but you only see people who are filthy rich around, around it.
This is such good context because when I was at the archive in July at Ransom Center and I was reading the Wallace DeLillo correspondence, and Wallace made a remark that he got to take a dream vacation that he never otherwise would have been able to
Yes,
afford to Capri. And you saying that makes me go like, oh, okay, now I like understand that comment a lot more
yes.
based on the socioeconomic situation of that place. Cool.
So you Capri is like you imagine like a small sea village, like on a Greek
Hmm.
island or something, but the shops are
Yeah.
Prada and Valentino, and there are no
Okay.
like there's no tobacconist. There's just like these hotels and but anyway. So the guy who is still organizes the festival is an Italian journalist called Antonio Monda, who lives in New York. He teaches at NYU. He used to write for La Repubblica. So Antonio knows a lot of writers, American writers. He has like a small literary, or he used to have, I don't know, a small literary salon at home or something. So he's friendly with a lot of writers, and he decided to start this small literary festival in Capri. I've no idea why in Capri. But that was
For the swagger.
he made it. He made a deal. Maybe some relative of his was from Capri. I don't know what's the link between Antonio and Capri is, but he got a deal with this beautiful 5-star hotel called Hotel Punta Tragara, which is in a very panoramic point. And the 5 writers, it's only like 5 writers every year, 5 or 6, something like this. They stay at the hotel and they have like their events at night, every night for like it's a couple of weekends, I think. It's a small audience, but a lot of people on Capri are Americans. And people would come, and also some people from Naples or Rome would come, but it's hard to get there and it's very expensive. So it's strange because it's a festival with a very, very small audience. But that first edition, wow, such amazing writers. And I was there because Antonio asked me to translate. Every writer had to write an unpublished piece to submit, to write for the festival, and something unpublished, and I was supposed to translate these pieces. So I did. I translated, the part that David brought was from the Pale King, but we didn't know that it was from the Pale King at the time.
Right.
I can't really remember what that was, but anyway. So I translated his piece and all of these people's writing, and then they also asked me to be the interpreter on stage, to be the translator on stage. So I translated for him, those were. Those were incredible days. I was hanging out with him. It was not the first time that I'd met him, and by then he was incredibly warm and he was lovely. He would say that me and him, we went way back. We were old friends. He really, I was still like in complete admiration of him, but he was super friendly with me. I was translating him when he did interviews during the festival, and that was amazing too because he was um, uh, of course he was saying a lot of interesting things to the journalists, but also he was asking the journalists interesting questions. I've
Yeah, I
never
love that
seen
about his interviews.
there was one. He had an interview with someone from Il Manifesto, which is a left-wing newspaper, and so David Foster Wallace was asking the journalist, what's the say? Why it is called like a communist newspaper? Do you still have communists in Italy? Because Il Manifesto is still called. It calls itself. I don't know. Like the New York Times has something written under the title. I don't know what you call that in English, but in like not a byline. Like all the news that's fit to print, something like that.
Right.
The claim of
Subtitle
Il
or like,
Manifesto
yeah.
is a communist newspaper. So I remember Wallace being very curious about this communist newspaper. He was asking a lot of questions, and I've never seen another American writer who would ask the journalists such specific questions about the newspaper, the situation in Italy. He didn't look like an introvert or
Yeah.
like I don't know, person with like mental issues at all. Of course, it's. I mean, when you're, I don't know, when you're on vacation in Capri, like with your wife, giving readings, maybe it's. I mean, even if you're, I mean, that's the best of of times for you, and you're at your very best. I don't know, but he didn't. That was the last time I saw him, and at that time I had no idea he was suffering from depression or he was.
Yeah.
I This is also quite interesting because I never knew that he was dealing with this daily. That he had been dealing with his problems for such a long time. I mean, I
I don't
assumed
think any of
he
us really knew. None of us really
exactly.
knew. And I remember right after that, probably the next year, 2007, of he published some stuff. You know, Good People came out of the New Yorker. He published a story in Harper's, maybe two things in Harper's. And I remember asking you, like, hey, we're going to go to Book Expo America. We're going to BEA in 2000, maybe it's 2008. And you know, will you be there? Will Wallace be there? And I remember you saying that you had asked his agent, and Bonnie Nadell said like, oh, he's been very sick. He had like a stomach ailment. Maybe I'm misremembering this, but I remember he used that excuse towards the end of he had bad
Yes.
stomach problems.
Yes, I was asked. I wrote to him. I asked some questions for it because we were publishing a new edition of Girl with Curious Hair, and we wanted to add like an interview with him in the end of the book. And I sent him these questions, and he never replied. And Bonnie wrote back saying he had like a bad stomach ache. He was hospitalized, and that was the first time I heard about him being sick. And then in 2000, when was that? 2008, right? He died in 2008. Yes, I was in
Right.
New York. I was in America the day he died. And I knew about it. It was on Friday night or on a Saturday night. He died on a Friday, but I knew about it on a Saturday night, and I was actually at. I make this sound like I'm this like I don't know socialite of New York of the New York literary scene, but I was at Gary Steingart's place at. I was at a party there, and I remember a friend of mine telling me, Martina, have you heard? David Foster Wallace has died. He is committed suicide. And it was like, I couldn't believe it. I actually thought there had to be a mistake. I had no idea he
Yeah.
could ever, I don't know. It was such a shock. And I actually,
Yeah.
um, I kept crying for like 2 days. I remember the day after that, I went to the Brooklyn Book Festival, and Jonathan Franzen was reading there, and I actually met Colson Whitehead with his kid in front of the like on the square on the plaza in front of the what it is City Hall,
City
Brooklyn
Hall,
City Hall.
Borough Hall, yeah,
Yeah,
Borough Hall.
and everyone who's seen me that day has seen me crying because I couldn't I didn't cry that much when my dad died, but because my dad had cancer, so I in a way it was. But for me, for him to commit suicide, and we could never have another page by him, never.
Yeah.
Oh God! Like all of a sudden, it was like heartbreaking completely.
Yeah. Like that's not a world that you want to have to live in, almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the same thing in that at first, when I first found out, was a tweet from Ed Champion, or maybe he posted on his blog, or someone sent it to the Wallace list, and I tweeted it out saying like, this has got to be a hoax or something, like I'm sure this is a hoax. Like, why would he post this? And I immediately got a direct message from Kathleen Fitzpatrick, who was his colleague at Pomona, and was like, it's not a hoax. The word isn't fully got out yet. And within there was a lot of craziness of people posting on the listserv and people freaking out. And then within probably 2 to 3 hours later, there was an LA Times obituary, reporter had picked it up and gone and called the coroner's department. So that was extremely, we all remember where we were that day.
Yes.
Martina,
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is that I haven't translated. Of course, I haven't translated anything by him after that. As a translator, all my work on David Foster Wallace's books was done before he died, and the fact that he was a depressed person and was having mental health issues, and that he was suicidal, that never came. I mean, the David Foster Wallace I knew and loved was a completely different figure than what he is now for everyone. I mean, when you talk about David Foster Wallace now, you always also talk about mental health and suicide. And
totally. It's like the first sentence of every essay on Wallace, basically, right?
Right? And
Yeah.
my perception of him, my love for him and my work on him have nothing to do with that part. It's strange to think of it. So it's hard for me to, of course, people, since I translated these books by him and I've met him and I talked to him, and there are pictures of me and him together, I get interviewed a lot in Italy about him. When on the anniversary of his death, there's at least one blog or a radio show or something that asks me questions like exactly why did he do that, or why did he committed suicide. And I really have no fucking idea. He was depressed in the first place. I don't know. I don't have any answer. It's just it's so strange for me to think of him as everybody else thinks of him. And it also, and the also absurd thing is that I was chosen to translate Karen Green's book, and it's I don't think she's a poet, and her language is completely different than David's language, and I think they're two very different sensibilities. But I was asked to translate that book because I had translated his books, which is a strange thing. But I'm reading her account and her emotional account of that event was so a circle was closing, but it was so painful, so awful, because I knew these people. I mean, I saw them together in Capri, walking hand in hand, or congratulating me at the end of the event for being a good translator. He bombed the cigarette from me. He was those people were so real at a very happy time. They were in front of me. We ate together. And then he committed suicide. And then 10 years later, I'm translating her work, describing how she cut him off when she found him. It was a lot of emotional things got into that.
Oh, I bet. I can't imagine. Ugh. Yeah, that line in Bow Down about how when she cut him down, she didn't want him to hurt his knees.
Yeah.
That sentence is so haunting.
Also, that's awful to translate into Italian because we don't have that. We have to have an object for cutting. So you can cut like a cord. You can cut you have to cut something. You don't cut somebody. There's no way in Italian to say that. So I actually had to ask Karen Green, what word should I say when I cut because I had no idea if that was like a cord or whatever. Can you, I don't know what you can use,
Rope.
but so in the end I felt I had to ask because I couldn't be literal if I wanted to keep the action of cutting like with a knife. I had to have like the object. Or in the end she said, no, I don't want. I told her I don't want to ask, and she said, I don't want to tell. So in the end I translated something like I brought you down or something like that. I didn't use the verb to cut, but that specific phrase was one of the, like in my whole career as a translator, that was like one of those moments where like, I don't want to do this. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, good job bringing that up, Dave.
Martina brought it up first. I just.
I mean, and there's a lot of bad stuff in Wallace's writing that you've had to translate. I mean, Dave brought up Incarnations of Burned Children earlier, and that's like, it's pretty rough to read about, especially Dave, you having like a toddler and like reading about, child soul death and being burned.
Yeah, my threshold for that kind of material is very different now than it was, 10 years ago when I was reading it. Like I was playing a video game the other day where like someone's daughter died, and I just like turned it off and deleted it off my PlayStation because I was like, nope, can't handle that. Yeah.
I felt that way watching Terrence Malick's Tree of Life. Everyone's like, oh, you gotta watch this. And I was like, I don't know that I want to like choose entertainment that is like about, imagine if your child died. And I was like, I don't, it's not even like, go there. Why would I do that to myself? But
I know.
Anyways, going back to Incarnations of Burned Children, you brought this up, and this is, Martina and I have a little story about this, is that before the days, she couldn't get Wallace to reply. She had questions about Girl with Curious Hair, and she emailed them several times. She contacted Wallace, and he was consistently like 9 months behind on his written correspondence, right? So you might get a reply to him a year later for something. A year later, him. So she was like, I really need to know this. And I was like, well, he's coming to New York like next week. And she's like, all right, I'm going to give you these questions. You print out these questions for him and like take them to him. And I was like, okay. And he did not like this at all. And it was like after reading in New York at Barnes & Noble in Union Square, which is like so busy. It's like one of the busiest spots in Manhattan, and it's a huge bookstore, and there was tons of people, standing room only. And he was always there to see friends too. He always had other people that he was hanging out with and meeting up with, and maybe even Franzen was there. Mark Costello was there, I think. And anyways, he was very much in a hurry to get out of there, and I kind of like ambushed him by giving him these letters and like
from Martina.
And we kind of, and he was like, I mean, he acknowledged right away, like, this is something Martina and Marco would do, right? Like, but he was also like, like, don't fucking bother, because those stories are basically untranslatable, and this is a waste of time to even question about. He's like, I don't speak Italian. What do I know? You're like, I can't help with the translation on this. And I was like, actually, I think you can help, and I think that they are translated. Like, I actually like got into a little bit of back and forth, and I remember I had my older brother with me, and after we had this like discussion and we left, he took the questions though, and my brother was like, man, that guy was a real jerk to you. And I was like, I was apologizing for him. I was like, he's not normally like this. He doesn't like crowds. He doesn't like these kind of events. And, I thought, he's maybe forget about this, but actually he went back to Martina, answered all the damn questions, and like wrote an apology to me for being so rude about it.
But I mean, the story is like it's even better than this. In that, like the day after, like Bonnie, the agent, wrote to me like saying, "Don't you dare disturb Dave. This way you were like overreaching, trespassing." I don't know what she said, but it was
Oh
like,
no,
oh, she was
really?
so angry. And so I was, of course, profusely apologizing, but he anyway
Sure.
he answered. He really answered the question. He sent fax because he would write faxes. He would I think he would send emails to, but no, he was sending
He'd go to
faxes, right?
Kinko's. Sometimes he would have like a Kinko's cover sheet, or maybe from the
Yeah.
university, but you had like a fax cover sheet. He sent
Yes,
tons of faxes. He
not
loved faxes.
not email, but
Yeah.
so he answered these questions. But after that, I think a few months after that, Marco and I were in New York again, and because we went, I think it wasn't it for I think it was for your wedding, Matt.
For
I
my
think that.
wedding, yeah.
Yeah, or I think, but I think it was but maybe I'm conflating two different things. But
No, no,
anyway,
this is
it's
exactly
exactly
right. It
the.
was in 2004. I
And
invited
that
him to
was
my
when
wedding.
we were there for your wedding, but he was also reading. I mean, he had a conversation with George Saunders in
Right.
downtown Manhattan. I can't remember where it was, like at
The
Astor
the
Place.
public theater, town
Uh,
hall, public
uh,
theater.
uh,
Not town hall,
yeah.
but public theater. Yeah,
Um,
Astor Place.
so he was in town, and Marco and I were just walking on up Broadway, where Shakespeare's and Co. used to be the bookstore,
Mm.
and we met him. We just on the street. We ran into him, and we're like, "Hey, Dave,
It's
hi,
David
hi,
Foster
it's
Wallace.
David Foster Wallace." And he's like, "Marco and Martina, hi, you guys." So we talk a little bit. I think his event was like the day after. Um, and I mentioned, of course, I apologized again, saying sorry for sending my friend Matt. I didn't want to intrude. And he was like, "Oh no, please apologize to Matt, because I was a dick." I can't remember what he said. I
Mm.
was awful to him. And so I said, "Well, if you want to like make amends, come into the bookstore and let's buy a card for him, because he's getting married, so you can like write a message to him, and he'll be the happiest guy on earth if I go to him with like a handwritten note."
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so he was, I think and so he did, and so he was a real sweet guy. And yeah, I'm sorry about all the mess I created, but
No.
he was he was really sorry for being a jerk. I hope your brother knows.
No, no. I think if you hadn't done that, like we wouldn't have this story now. So it was worth it just to get the card, the
Yeah.
wedding card from him, and the signed
Do you
card. And
do you have those on hand, Matt? Can you read them
of
on
course,
air? That'd be fun.
yeah.
I'd like to
Give
hear.
give me 1 second. I want to. I'll have to go grab it from another room, but I'm gonna go grab it. Actually, you know what? We could maybe even scan it and put it in the show notes.
Oh, that's a fun idea.
I was going to ask Martina if you have it handy, your translation of Girl with Curious Hair and the first story, Little Expressionless Animals. If you could read the first like couple of sentences or first like
Oh, sure.
paragraph in Italian, that would be
In
great.
Italian.
Do you want me to read the beginning of Piccoli animali senza espressione?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, it's just the first like 5 or 6 lines from Little Expressionless Animals in Italian. Piccoli animali senza espressione. È il 1976, il cielo è basso e pieno di nubi. Le nubi grigie sono bitorsolute, increspate e lucenti. Il cielo ha un aspetto cerebrale. Sotto il cielo c'è un campo, nel vento. Al lato del campo corre un'autostrada pallida. Passano un sacco di macchine. is enough.
I have to say, and I'm
That's
not
great.
pandering because you're Italian, but Italian is my favorite language to listen to in the whole world. It's so pleasant and gorgeous. So
I
thank you
agree.
for
And
that. Yeah.
we talked about, remember Jhumpa Lahiri wrote a book in
Yes.
Italian about learning Italian, and I was just blown away that she did that. And I remember asking Martina, like, how is she? And Martina said you had seen her speak Italian before, and she's actually like really good.
Yes, she's incredible. I mean, she speaks um, she uses more formal language. Like if she speaks in a not very colloquial
Mm-hmm.
way, like a highbrow. I don't know, but she
Right. Yeah.
speaks so well. It's incredible. She's a genius. She's brilliant. Her brain has something that as you can understand from my English, I'm not as brilliant as she is. But the problem in translating David Foster Wallace into Italian is that Italian is always much longer than English. Whenever every
Mm.
Italian translator knows that, like if the book, an English book translated into Italian is always like 20% longer. So
Oh wow.
when
So how many pages is
uh,
Infinite Jest in Italian then? Do you know? Do you know that number?
I guess
Because
if
we
you
have a sticker for the society that said just as the number 1079 for the page count of the English Infinite Jest. So if
oh,
we ever made that for Italy, we would have to we'd have to make it long bigger.
yeah, in Italian it's like I think it's 1400 pages or something, so
Oh, okay.
it is
Wow.
longer.
Yeah. That's
um
significant.
but because and so David Foster Wallace had these long winding sentences, and to it's even hard in Italian. They get to be even longer, and they are so hard to like manipulate in a way that the reader doesn't get lost. You have to
Mm-hmm.
give
They're
them a
labyrinthine.
certain
Yeah.
rhythm and sound. You don't want to make him sound awkward or like verbose or boring, or because it's not. But, but but English has a way of like is more compact than
Mm.
Italian. You can use the same words as a verb or as a noun. You can like put together two nouns to make an adjective. It's like it's completely different. So it was hard to if Wallace writes like a 20 a sentence that's long, like a whole page long in Italian, it's
Yeah.
even more than 1 page long, and you have to deal with that. It's a bit of a nightmare. But
Yeah, I bet.
so it's also like so it's challenging, but also so satisfying for a translator to work on that language because it's so precise, it's so deliberate. You know exactly what he, apart from like what is a fan toad, what is a howling
Yeah,
fan toad.
totally.
Okay, you don't know that, but
Neither do we though in English, so that's fine.
yeah. But for the most part, you're following a very clear path. You have this brilliant mind who's like giving you a beautiful picture with a lot of details, and you have to find the right way to convey that in Italian. But it's so precise and so specific. So you feel like yes, you're not wandering in the mist. You have a very clear
Hmm.
path when you work on his language.
Hmm.
I think that's fascinating.
Yeah,
Dave, I did dig
it's
up
cool.
this card, and Martina, you probably haven't seen this card in 15, 16 years, but the front of it says everything happens for a reason. And
Really? Oh
yeah,
man, what a
and
platitude that is.
I think it's, it's supposed to, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
it's supposed to be like
it's
good, like
contextually appropriate for the situation, I think.
congratulations on your wedding, like everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And then inside, Wallace wrote, Matt and Jordan, heartfelt congratulations on your marriage and much joy to you in the future. And then he drew a little squiggly face. David Wallace, the guy who grimaced at Matt, re Martina's queries. Apologies for that. And then Martina and Marco signed it underneath that. And then on the back of the card, I never noticed this until just now, but there's a tiny little quote on the back of the card that says, "The word fate is derived from the Latin fatum, meaning what has been spoken. So watch what you say. It could determine the course of your future."
Whoa.
Oh,
That's almost
Very Oracle
like a
at
fortune
Delphi
cookie or something.
type stuff. Yeah.
It's almost like a fortune cookie.
Very Macbeth. Yeah.
Anyways, I'll send you a picture of that. It was very, very cool. And,
That's cool.
You know, I feel like we've just gotten started. I know that we're past the hour mark, Martina, and I have like probably 100 other things that you and I could talk about.
oh yeah.
And I want to do that, but I want to be respectful of your time. I know it's extremely late at night there. And so I want to first ask you, did I cut you off on anything? Is there anything that you wanted to say before we go? Is there anything you were going to share and you haven't got to yet?
What can I say? Well, my remembering these all the times when I was traveling to New York a lot and like buying literary magazines in bookstores and meeting you and meeting David Foster Wallace, it brings me back to a time in publishing when the publishing industry, as I experienced it, was like less about like products and marketing and the industry and strategies, and of course there were no social media, but it was about people. It was a lot about like I felt that there was like a different energy or a different way of like connecting through books 20 years ago than we have now. And I think the social media has done a lot of damage in that, and also the way that maybe capitalism has like developed in the past 20 years. But still there was like some, or maybe it's just that I was younger, but really there is something there. The fact that you and I came together through David Foster Wallace and we actually met him and he was part of our life. It has some specific magic to it or something. I don't know. It makes me think of the best things about publishing. Yes, which is like connecting people actually. And the fact that after 20 years I'm talking with someone in Texas and someone in New Zealand about this guy who's dead, and there's something there that's precious. I think I just wanted to say that.
That is a great note to end on, and that is
Sure is.
Remembering that time of optimism. I have fond memories of that time myself. I worked in the margins of publishing, or I worked in publishing and academic publishing at the time, and we did a lot of trade publishing that was very different than it is now. And I really want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today, and I hope that you and I can talk again soon and not wait so long between talks.
No.
It's been a while, and we didn't even get to talk about coronavirus, and it's actually good for me to talk about COVID-19, being in Italy and the US, and New Zealand is probably the least worrisome right now.
Oh my gosh, I went to the pub last night and played games with my friends. They opened things up last night. It was nice. Not that it was not that nice though, guys. Come on. We could only stay there for 2 hours. They kicked us out.
Wow. But Martina, if people want to connect with you, I know you're on Twitter. If they want to read your work, where can they find it? It's you want to tell us the website for the publishing company?
The publishing house I work for now is called Edizioni SUR, and the website is www.edizionisur.it. I can write it down for you, and maybe you can put it in the...
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. And I'm on Twitter, yes. So if anyone has questions, I guess maybe they can ask them through there or through you.
Sure. What is your handle there on Twitter?
I think it's Martina Testa. Yes.
Cool. We'll link that as well in the show notes. Fantastic.
Dave, where can people find the Concavity Show?
Oh yeah, we are at Concavity Show on Twitter and Instagram. You can email us. We are concavityshow@gmail.com. And if you're a Facebook person, just search The Great Concavity, and we are there as well. Martina, yeah, thank you so much again. It's been amazing talking to you. I have so many more questions I want to ask as well, but they'll have to wait till maybe we can meet up in person in Amsterdam at the Wallace conference next year.
Next year's Wallace conference.
Yeah.
That would be
we'll
so
have to
great.
Tell you more about that.
That's in the works, so let's hang out there.
Thinking about like traveling to Amsterdam right now, it feels like wow.
It feels like magical realism or something.
Yeah, I mean,
like
I
that
still
can't
haven't.
exist anymore.
For me, it would be still great to go to like the center of Rome. I think maybe in like 10 days I can get to there. Amsterdam, maybe next year. Yes, let's meet there.
Yeah, good. Sounds great.
Okay.
We also want to thank new patrons this month, Mark Bronner and our good friend Chris Ayers and Ed Rasso. Thank you guys so much for supporting what we do here. We really appreciate it, and it goes a long way in making this podcast. And as usual, we want to thank our good friend Robin O'Neill for her art associated with our show, and the band Parquet Courts for their song Instant Disassembly. Martina, thanks again so much. It's been amazing talking to you. And we hope you stay safe and healthy out there.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Martina.
Good night, or morning, or whatever. Yeah. Ciao.
Catch me now as I sing into darkness. I thought to be extinct.
All right. Does everyone see little waves and lines on their recording?
I am recording, and I think we should still do the clap. I want to do it.
The clap's good. Yeah. Martina, do you see some lines?
Yeah. It is recording.
Good. Perfect. Okay. Should we clap on 3? Same thing?
Yes.
3, 2, 1, clap. Okay, ready?
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Perfect.
There was some lag there, I think.
Yes.
Should we try it again?
No, you can line them all up now. You'll be able to see that spike. It'll be good.